You worked on Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign in 2016. Many would argue that the Democratic Party's decline began with that election. Right now, the party's approval rating is at a historic low, 38% according to Pew. How do Democrats restore trust in the party, given there's been a decade of quite a lot of negativity?
I think part of it is making sure we get better messengers to get the word out. And that's what Run for Something does, is we try and get real people who have lived experience that reflects where voters are, who are renters, who are paying childcare bills, who are looking at the housing market and saying, I'm never going to be able to buy a home, who are thinking about how they can't afford to live where their family is. They can't necessarily afford to take the job or have the career that they want. We need messengers who can really break through and can show up in non-political spaces and sound like normal people. That, I think, is a huge part of the battle, along with more media like this and more spaces like this.
Such a high bar, Amanda. Normal people, that's a very high bar.
It is like amazing when you sit down and think about it, though. How many current members of Congress do you think could show up in a non-political space and have a conversation that actually is interesting and engaging?
That's a very good point.
Not that many.
Not that many, sadly. David Hogg, the newly elected 25-year-old vice chair of the DNC, he recently announced that his PAC, Leaders We Deserve, would commit $20 million to fund younger candidates, more dynamic candidates who would unseat people he thinks are ineffective Democratic incumbents. Do you think primarying incumbents with younger candidates is the way forward for the Democrats?
I think it's got to be one of many tools in our arsenal. The first candidate that David's PAC endorsed is actually an open race. Robert Peters, a state senator in Illinois, who Run for Something worked with many years ago in his competitive state senate race. There are incredible local electeds across the country in nearly every state, including in nearly every House Democratic district where a representative over the age of 75 is currently serving, who are experienced, who are charismatic, who could run and win and lead in a way we need in this moment. We got to consider every possible avenue to get new folks into power.
Hogg's decision has been met with the DNC basically cracking down and trying to nullify his election as vice chair, of the DNC. Is that basically the Democratic Party telling on itself that it gets challenged internally by a new, young, up-and-coming person, and they decide to basically punish that person?
I have complicated feelings about this because I actually think it's really important that as the DNC goes into its most important role, which is setting up the presidential primary process for 2028, that it be a neutral arbiter. Because as we just talked about, there's immense distrust of this organization and the institution. I think David could have done this work outside of the party leadership structure. In fact, it would probably serve the party better if he did. He chose to run for vice chair. That was his call, knowing this would be a problem. It's their mess to figure out. I do think it's really important, though, that the DNC be seen as an institution that can be trusted and is neutral in primaries,